Welcome to the DRQ Talks podcast, and I am Derek Mugabi. Now, this is a guest segment where we get to host one of the most, I don't want to use some words, but I would say one of the best entrepreneurs that we have in the space, not only as an entrepreneur, but also impacting other entrepreneurs. And for this particular person, I think we go way back. We've hustled a lot. We hosted a couple of things together when we were trying to figure it out. I think I've known this particular person for close to 3 years, and all the 3 years we've done amazing stuff. And I've seen him start an amazing or revolutionary startup that is redefining the marketing space in the country. And in studio today, ladies and gentlemen, I have Don Casey.
Thank you, Derek.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
How are you feeling today?
I feel amazing. I feel honored. It was like a challenge. Sometimes when you're not comfortable being behind camera, you postpone things. But today I said, you know what? Let me make sure I show up. Yeah.
Thank you so much for honoring our invite. Don, tell us a bit about yourself before we jump into the startup.
Don is a curious individual. Don is a very curious individual. He is relentless about finding out things and getting to, understand people. I'm really pursued by solving problems in Africa. That's what motivates me. That's what drives me. And not just solving problems, but I want to be able to add value in how I solve them. My phrase for whenever somebody asks me, what do you do? Or, who is Don or this or that? I am a human being that turns seeds into forests.
You always have the right phrases for almost everything. Yeah. One thing I remember about you was when you were still working. I don't know if I should mention the company, but when you're still working with that company, and then I remember having a conversation with you, and you're saying that I want to take this giant leap into entrepreneurship, and I was scared for you, but you aren't scared. And I want us to actually start the conversation from right over there. And what inspired you to make that move? It was a very strange and scary move. How was it like for you to be like, today I'm handing in my resignation letter and I'm moving into this field?
There was, that muscle had been built before. I'm a university dropout, so the time I was dropping out of uni, like that time when I was leaving my job felt the same way. Like, the feeling, the emotions, the nerves, the worries were exactly the same. But when I put in my resignation letter, I think I don't think there's a proper explanation for that. I really definitely think that sometimes something's wrong with me. There are some things that I can't answer, but I just really wanted to pursue building this. For me, it compared to so many other people, not doing it was more expensive than doing it. I really had, it was a must for me to do. It was something beyond myself. It felt like a calling, like a voice in your head that does not rest when you sleep, when you're at the office, when you're speaking to people, every time you're attending like startup events, or, you're listening to a Diary of a CEO podcast. It's just speaking to that little thing inside.
How long did you have that voice?
I've had it all my life. Yeah. It's a calm, still, strong voice that's relentless. And it's inside there, just, it doesn't rest. It's not loud. It doesn't just say, oh, go do this. It's just calm, still, and strong. Yeah.
And I've known you, for the time I've known you've tried a couple of things. But then, and I think for many entrepreneurs out there, or people who want to actually try out stuff, one of the biggest thing or the biggest challenges has been the niche. Where do I go? Because I think in Uganda, when you go, for example, you open TikTok and you say, 10 businesses I should start in 2025. There are like very many businesses, that you could start. So for you, you've tried a couple of things.
Yes.
How do you then zero down and be like, you know what, we haven't even talked about the startup, but we want to talk about this whole foundation. How do you zero down and say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do?
Well, I'd say after trying a couple of things and failing at them, the most I say a good answer to that question is to find a problem you're obsessed with solving. You know, if you see a problem and you fall in love with that problem, then go ahead and do it. These things of, what business can I start? They say drop shipping. They'll say, they bring all these things that you can do, shipping things from Alibaba and whatnot. In the long run, that business, well, if you're solving a problem that you really, really love, that business can actually, thrive and grow. If you're just out there to make a quick buck, it will be a quick buck business. And, but, if I'm speaking to an entrepreneur that's out there that really wants to build a legacy, that wants to solve for Africa, that wants to, maybe change their life, I think it's to just look for a problem that you are passionate about solving and give it your best and give it your all. Fall in love with that problem. Like, if I'm a sound engineer and, I'm listening to the sound of the mics and maybe they're a little bit off, I will have that itch in me to make sure that they are perfect. Like, it doesn't matter how much I'm getting paid or what. It's just that I'm so obsessed with solving that problem, and that's why I would have that job, per se. So in a business sense, it's somebody that's looking to solve the problem of entertainment, someone that's looking to solve a problem in gaming, and they're constantly innovating in that direction because they've fallen in love with solving the problem. I think that's what sets all these different ventures apart. And for somebody that's out there wanting to start a business, I'd say that would be the quickest way. That would be the quickest way, just to find the problem, be in love with it, and then innovation, looking out for networks, being in the right places, that comes as a result of that. Yeah.
I think one of the things that they always say is that if one is to be an entrepreneur, then they need an aspect of being crazy. Because I remember by the time you met this leap, you had bills to pay. At that time, I think you were still renting in one of the most rich suburbs, Nalia. And you decide to leave your source of income and start a business. So which is the biggest? I think most people have that fear that, how am I going to pay bills? And you're talking about passion. Passion is going to drive you through. But I would want to maybe talk about planning or something. How did you manage to still stay afloat? Because entrepreneur events, you're there and you're still looking good even when you didn't have a source of income. How did you stay afloat?
Well, so when I was working that job, I did save for 6 months. I did a 6 month saving. And the hope was that after 6 months, I would have been able to build my water to be sustainable enough, for myself and for the people that are attached to my water. But that didn't work. Like, the fear has always come true. And 6 months came and there was no money. There was no money and there were bills to pay. I think that is the point that that you realize you're capable of so much more. That's when the rubber band gets elastic, But I remember when I was leaving my job. So at my water, we've raised a little bit. I spoke to my shareholders and I told them, I just was speaking to them and I said, I think we should put some money aside, for operations, as much as we are investing in the product and whatnot, to be able to sustain myself. I want to be able to do this full time. And they went back and forth. One was on board with it. The other wasn't on board with it. But by the time I was sharing with them this conversation, I'd already submitted my resignation letter. Yeah. So, and, a week goes by because resignation is 2 weeks notice. Well, now a week goes by and I'm just trying to see how I can get these guys to at least put together something for me. Now a week goes by, I have a meeting with them and then this time they say, they're not able to do that. So one of them goes off the call and I remain on a call with the initial person that, pushed me in terms of finances at my water. And I was open with him and I told him, you know what? I have actually resigned. And he said, I know you did. because he's a fellow founder. I said, I know you did. And I said, how am I going to do it? I said, you're going to do it. It's going to work out eventually. Yeah. But all those fears that you have of leaving the job, of how, like, I'd say 90%, it will happen. And that's what makes you the founder that you are, your character builds, but you find you survive either way. You find a way of doing things. People will come through. Your other income streams will be able to sustain you. The networks that you have, you then start to tap into them. You then become more hungry to pursue and say, you know what? Like, let me tell you something. At the end of those 6 months, once everything was done, the rent, this and that, the speed that I had to make sure my water is self-sustaining was very different from the one I had when I was just beginning to resign. It was a very different cadence that I was using to pursue these problems. Like, I needed this done.
You had more to lose.
Yes. So if in the beginning I was talking to maybe 3 clients a day, this time I was making like 53 calls. I was, because I needed to do this, and it eventually worked out. Yeah. So yeah, I'll say that.
So in a nutshell, you just have to jump in and then you'll figure out how to swim. But actually, talking about startups, this particular podcast is sponsored or is made possible by High People Foundation. Make sure you check out the work they're doing. Yeah, the work they're doing with fintechs, the work they're doing with telemedicine, the work they're doing with creatives. Yeah, make sure you check out their work and let's build this together. Don,
yes,
talking about the startup, what are you actually working on?
So right now we are working on Africa's biggest ad tech startup, and that is My Water.
Africa's biggest ad tech startup. What does that mean?
So ad tech is advertising technology. So My Water is an innovative ad tech startup. This is My Water. And what we do is we are solving 2 major problems in Africa. The first is we are solving a problem of innovative advertising solutions, and the other is access to clean drinking water. Now, My Water is an eco-friendly smart Tetra Pak. This Tetra Pak is essentially a billboard in your hands, and the reason we say ad tech, the tech element of this is that we're able to track the reach, engagement, conversion rate, and location of the ads on this Tetra Pak.
Something the billboards don't actually do.
Exactly. So your traditional media is not able to capture content such as this. The other thing of this is that it can reach anywhere at any time. It can be in a taxi, it can be in a slum, it can be in a most prestigious office, it can be in Uganda Airlines. It can be in all kinds of places at the same time. Yeah. So for us, it was to see, okay, how do we create a billboard that can reach anywhere, that has a good multiplication effect, and at the same time solve the problem of access to clean drinking water. Our water is free. We distribute it at ride-hailing companies. We distribute it at events. We have our food soldiers. The water is free. And we have a contract manufacturing agreement with a certified water brand in Uganda where we're able to get certified clean drinking water so that people are getting actual clean drinking water.
So let me get this right. It's free, clean drinking water that has ads.
Yes.
And then you can actually track where those ads go, yes, and the engagement and the conversion.
Yes, so we have a dashboard. So clients that choose to use this as an advertising medium are able to have a dashboard of their own. For example, if it's a company like Jumia, Jumia would have a dashboard of their own to see in real time how many people are buying things off of My Water, off of these Tetra Paks. Who are they reaching? Because we can track their location. You can say, okay, 14 people bought things from Gayaza on these Tetra Paks. You're able to see that data in real time. Yeah. So that's the value that we give to the clients.
How do you come up with this, man?
Well, this is about a year and a half of just trying to design a product that works, especially for Africa. Africa is a very community-centered landscape. So building things like My Water, that you can use to communicate so many things like health. You can take this to Busheni and show somebody how to use a mosquito net. If you're trying to push on the end of sexual awareness, you can show somebody how to use a condom. You can put a small map on the Tetra Pak that shows them the nearest healthcare center. Like, these things are very effective. Now, the idea comes from, I would say one day, there's a couple of iterations of this concept. Yeah. The first was, there's a gentleman named Josh Clifford that's against capitalism. He has an aluminium water company, but they give out aluminium bottles with like a tiny advert on it, but it's for charity. They give like 5 bottles a week. Ours is different. We give 10,000 bottles a month. So for theirs, yeah. And the thing is, they are mainly focused on water and charity. We are mainly focused on advertising and then water, So that was the first point of it. The second was actually seeing water consumption in Uganda. Like, I studied that, and, in a restaurant, at least 5 tables in every restaurant, there'll be a bottle of water. In an office space, like, water will get everywhere. In a taxi, in a bus, in an office, events, So it's just to see, okay, how do I replace that with My Water? But then on top of that is, okay, if My Water is in a person's hand, how do I make My Water's engagement desirable? That's when we created the incentives around it. So all these adverts you see on the Tetra Pak are exclusive to the Tetra Pak. They're not on billboards or wherever. It's only on the Tetra Pak. So if they're saying 70% off, only on the Tetra Pak, So this is your billboard. You have it there. Every time you want to order something at 70% off, you just scan it. It's there on your table. It's your billboard there.
So your revenue comes from the people who are advertising?
Yes. So the companies that advertise, it covers our cost of production, gives us our profit margins and everything.
Talking about finances and revenue and all that, you did mention that you had saved up for 6 months, and then after the 6 months, the money is done and nothing has really moved. And you had also a bit of mentioned, funders. And I think that's the biggest problem we're having in Africa, funding and maybe saving up to start a business and things like that. How have you been able to navigate that space? And how have you been able to reach a point of actually launching a product and still staying, with your investors?
Well, I would say I've been very favored by God, and, with My Water. On the idea stage with having nothing, we had someone that was willing to help and support, the first phase of it. And, you know how the investment works, that investor will bring on another person, so to minimize the risk and increase the chances of this succeeding. So that's how it happened. But it was difficult. Of course, we had, a few challenges navigating that. The thing is, at My Water, especially with startups, when you are an early stage startup, the kind of investor you're looking for is not somebody that's looking for an interest or a particular return or so. That's the wrong investor for an early stage startup, because the risk is extremely high and you're all on different, like, your expectations are different. You want this person to believe in you so you can do all these crazy experiments with this idea. This person is giving you money because they want a certain amount after a period of time. The kind of investor that you need as an early stage startup is somebody that believes in you. Somebody that believes in you. That is the kind of investor that you need.
How would then a person, someone who wants to start, how would you then advise them to have the same favor? You said you were favored by God, but I believe there was some background work that was done by you to attract that favor. Had you done a lot of networking before? Had you tried to sell your idea as much as possible? How did you attract that favor? So at least someone can pick probably something practical that they can actually do.
Yeah, I think. Again, I mentioned I'm a very curious individual. So by the time these conversations started, I think I was ready with certain information that gave these people enough facts that they needed to back me. Yeah. So once they started asking about, so this thing, how shall we do this? Where shall we get the water from? Why do you want to do it? Where does the revenue? Who is our target client? How much money do you think we can make from this in a year? Certain questions like that, I had answers to those questions. They were not factual, but I estimated, and, I had a certain thinking towards that. It's not just saying, oh man, I have this thing I would like to start, how much can you, it's like, no. Every time I'd have an engagement like that, the person would say, oh, send me your financials, send me your projections. What have you done so far for yourself? I remember when I was working, I saved up for like 2 years so that I can be able to invest in a first set of prototypes. There were 30 prototypes.
And you invested in them yourself?
I invested in them myself. The entire product design, everything, getting, it proper. And then, when I went for this, I said, oh, here are the prototypes. That when I had the prototypes, that like the phase of doing that was, it was very easy. Yeah. But this is, let me just tell you a story just for context. Yeah. So, there's a gentleman that inspires me in the ecosystem, and I had to do some work with them. But anyway, I pitched and everything, but it didn't work out. So I asked him out for a coffee just to understand, why it didn't work out. So we talk over coffee and everything. We're going to getting to know each other. And then he asked me a question. He says, Don, what's your big picture? What's your vision? What are you chasing in life? I said, man, if I tell you, you'd most probably laugh. There's this idea that I have, and I want to execute it, as soon as possible. He said, tell me the idea. And I had just a picture on my phone, and I showed him the idea. The first thing he said is like, hey, Don, if you're serious, I'll give you money. I told this guy, man, I'm serious. I'm a very serious guy. But he said, if you're serious, I'll give you money. And, that conversation went on, and I kept on, when someone tells you, if you're serious, I'll give you money. As texting him like no one's business. Blue tick. And then after some time, he responds like, hey, I'm going to be speaking at this event. If you'd like, you'd come and see. It was totally offside. So I go for this event at the Innovation Village, and he's on the panel. And after he comes off the panel, I think it ended like at 10:30. He's like, oh, where's Don? Have you seen Don? I say, yeah, Don is there. I see him coming looking for me. I'm like, this guy is looking for me. I say, okay. So the first question he asks me, is how much do you want? I've never been asked that question in my life before.
And what was your answer?
I said like 7K. I hesitated.
7K USD?
Yes. To get things started. And he laughed, said, I think you're not ready on that. He said, I'm going to stay up working all night. If you can send me like your financials and a breakdown of that, I'd be happy to see. I went back home. I didn't sleep. I worked on that. I sent it to him. He saw it. Again, back to the same. Blue ticks. And I'm like, hey man, I need this thing to work. After a while, I spoke to a close friend of his, a person that introduced me to him. And I said, you know what? I know this guy likes doing morning jogs. Yeah. Can we do a morning jog all together? Like the three of us. I said, I can pull that off for you. So he texts the guy and says, can we do a jog at 6:30? I'd like to bring Don along. Say, hey, Don, I like that kid. He's good. Hey, so let's do a morning jog. So we do a morning jog around Ntinda, Naguru. We break ice. We talk about things, family, And then after that, we go for Katogo. So after that Katogo, and that person that linked us left, he had someone to go, and it's just me and him again. And we now have an extensive conversation on the idea, and he's serious this time. And he says, you know what, we need to, like, for the start, to push this idea, 7K is little. We need X and Y amount of money. And, to get that up and running, I'm going to make my commitment by buying the domain today. So our domain, mywater.agency, was bought by him, and that was like him saying I'm in. Then next day we did Excel spreadsheets of how we're going to spend the money that he was willing to give us, and then the rest is history. Yeah.
Interesting. And I think for an entrepreneur who is out there, it's not just about sending the pitch deck, there is more work, people even ate Katogwe. There is more work to do than just sending the pitch deck and speaking all the fancy English. You must be really trying so much to get the people on board. And Don, talking about, you've shared a lot of learnings, and I would want to ask, knowing what you know today, with your experience with My Water and where you've reached, let us say you know what you know today and you're still at the other company before you sent in the a resignation letter, what would you have done different to make sure that my water is probably grows faster, or probably takes a very different trajectory? Or would you have even started, or you'd have just remained in the corporate world?
Would have done different. I'd say I would say I if I believed in myself a little bit more, I think would make progress. I was very timid, and you know, generally in my pursuit of a lot of things, I have come in like the underdog, the younger guy, the guy that doesn't have a degree, so sometimes it's a good thing, but sometimes it affects my level of confidence personally. And, there's certain opportunities that I look back at and I feel like I would have capitalized on those opportunities by just being confident, by just asking, and that's the difference. That when I was starting out my water, I was very timid. I was like, what if this person does this with this idea? What if they take it to a right patent?
What if they steal the idea?
What if this, and it robbed so many opportunities, from me. And if I'd said way early, I had this thing on my phone for, I don't know, like 8 months. And that period of time, the people that were within the country that I was meeting right now are not in the country. They went, I don't know.
You could have utilized
that
that
opportunity.
opportunity.
Really, yeah. But yeah, I think now for me, it's I'm very hyper aware of opportunities. I don't hide. I don't shy away from them. I'll go and I'll share what I want. If somebody says, "Oh, how much would you?" I say, "I want $5 million." Yeah, I won't be like, "How you see?" No, I'll tell you. I'll be very confident. I'll ask. Go either you go big or go home. Yeah. So that's it. And the other learning I'd say is, as people who as entrepreneurs, there, some of them have started, some have stopped. Others want to restart again, and they're going for a lot of conferences and teachings and podcasts and whatnot. But all that does not make a difference unless you start. You can't steer a car that's not moving. The directions are only important when you're moving. If somebody says turn right, you can't turn right when you're in the same place. So a lot of this information that you're getting at these conferences, these engagements, these podcasts only make sense once you've started. So I think that would be, the other point I'd like is just once, these things, this is how you raise invest. I wasn't even raising investment, but I tune in. This is how, and the difference, what I'd do with that information when I wasn't raising investment, now what I did with that information when I was actively raising for investment, that's two different things. There's writing it in a book, and there's getting it and calling the guy there and then, and applying it. So, so it's just to get started. Like, that's where the power is. Yeah,
it's more useful when you get started. So as we close, just one thing, the conviction that we have here is that, African society mostly was built on stories. And we want to also leverage stories, of entrepreneurs to build a whole ecosystem of entrepreneurs, probably inspire, a new generation of entrepreneurs, but specifically sharing super practical nuggets from entrepreneurs who are already in the field, people who are building things, people who are changing the spaces where they are, and make sure that you probably, you could pick a thing or two and make sure that you do something for yourself. Don, as we close, anything that you think you've not talked about that you think someone out there would want to know? And you've been talking about you being the underdog. How old are you?
I am turning 24 first March.
24, and you already have a company, and you've already resigned from another company.
Yes, it's crazy. I used to hide my age so much. Up to now, I've just shared it here. But I don't think where I worked, besides the HR team, I don't think anyone knew how old I was. And I would make it a point. Most of the spaces I'd go, and some of the clients I engage with, maybe this will come out, and they may get to see it. But I used to hide it so much. say, oh, wow, this guy, I'd be engaging with like the 28 to 30, 33-year-old guys, and I'd blend in so well. I don't know how.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I would hide it so much. And so the underdog thing, I've never been good in school. I used to be bottom of the class. My report always had advice to repeat. I have ADHD, so my attention I struggled so much. It didn't matter how much I read. In P7, they made me go back to study with P5 kids. Math, long division, because I would not screw my head around that. So when it comes to academics, poor guy. When it comes to uni, I dropped out. But, when you catch me in my element, I'm a whole different animal. Yeah.
It's about the element. Okay, great. So, just to speak to the vision of this podcast, looking at the ecosystem or the entrepreneurial space that we're trying to build in the country, and first year we're trying to use stories, to build or to contribute our part of building the ecosystem. Probably when you look at the whole ecosystem, what do you think is missing, and what do you think we as entrepreneurs or people who are already building could probably do to inspire, and a whole new generation? Why I use the word inspire? It's because when we were young, we were really inspired to be professionals, we're inspired to be doctors, pilots, and all these things. But now we're trying to say, we want to inspire these young people to build rather than, work for people who have already built. So when you look at the ecosystem and the space that we're having and the struggles we're having already, what do you think we can do to make sure that the people who are out there who still have ideas but they're still employed, people who are out there still struggling with different things that are stopping them from starting, what can we do to make sure that that is no longer there? And we're having a generation, or we're having a country like the US, probably, where dreams are much more viable, where we're going to have people investing in dreams rather than before they even see the minimum viable product.
I think, for our ecosystem particularly, we should stop building in Uganda like we're building in Silicon Valley. You have a lot of people that are trying to implement a model of a completely different ecosystem here, because everyone is doing it's startup setup, but like someone is trying to replicate that. Like in Silicon Valley, I can have no idea and raise millions of dollars overnight. So if there's a startup founder that's here and they would want to do something that cannot work, guaranteed. You can't wake up and say, I want to, I have an idea around parking, e-parking, or whatever it is, and you want to raise $9 million and you get it, and then, you do this and that. That can't happen here. So, yeah, I'd say the ecosystem model has to be very tailored and generic to the Ugandan landscape, or even East African landscape, and ecosystems that are doing that are thriving more, like Nigeria or Egypt or, Kenya itself, is that those people actually are investing time to understand how startups behave in those ecosystems. And they've tailored their, finance, their legal, how the government helps to that. Our government, I don't even know if our government knows what a startup is, or even if they exist, or the policies that need to, to see that these entities actually grow and thrive. I think that's a starting point. Like as Ugandans or as Ugandans ecosystem people, what are we doing that's tailored to ourselves that can actually help us thrive? It's like having a home, yeah? In this home, the problem is you have a certain problem in your house, that you want to solve. But once you're trying to replicate something, maybe that you're seeing from a movie, or you've even never, let's say, gone to the US, but you're just trying to replicate that problem in your home. No, understand what's happening in your home. Get to see what are the causes of what's happening. How often is it happening? What's the behavior of this? What resources do you have that can help to solve that problem? How can you stop that from happening? And how can you change that environment? That's what we need for our ecosystem. We need to understand it. We need to give it what it needs. And then, it will grow and give us the fruits. But we can't just replicate and think, in some sort of movie here. Yeah.
Interesting. You talked about raising, and I remembered when the internet had just come in the late 1990s, when it has just been commercialized, people were raising millions of dollars just from saying, I want to do something about the internet. Just that. And you raise money. Yeah. But of which that can never work here in the country. And I think that's why it's very important to tell more of the Ugandan stories, so that we pick more inspiration from Ugandan stories rather than listening to Mark Zuckerberg. And then all of a sudden you're picking, you want to replicate what he's doing, but then you forget context. How about we talk about entrepreneurs who are building things here, pick inspiration from them and probably replicate, or even better, what they are trying to build with.
100%. Like, you should, people in the ecosystem have been advising us to change our TikTok algorithm to the Asian algorithm, because like startups that are growing like in Asia, have their own generic things, like their investment strategies, for like the institutional investors, or the fundraising strategies for the founders, or the scaling strategies and whatnot. It's like tailored to them. They have their own guys who disseminate this content. For us, we are all feeding on this, Western culture and whatnot. But there's a couple of founders that have actually shared with me to tune into that content, like Asian-based content. Those guys are hungry for tailored content. Recently, I saw a video of Vusi and he was sharing. He went to like a university, and there were all these Indian tech founders and executives, and he gave this keynote of how like the funding cycle will change, and this is what's going to happen. There are going to be more mergers and acquisitions this year and whatnot. Yeah, but his examples were very Western. And the guys there said, okay, we understand that this is going to happen and this is the trend, but you've studied Western trends. We want you to give us trends for our Asian, context, and what you'd ask us to look out for in Asia. What companies do you think will be merged and acquired in Asia? Like, give us those trends and patterns that we look into that. I think that's what we need to be doing.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think a platform like this will definitely like bring the guys who are going to tell us how they did it, and in Uganda, how they navigated, how did they exit, what's it like when they give you your check?
Native in Uganda should be here.
Native, Hakiza, we need those guys here, and so they share these stories. Like, I would like to know in depth what happened, the legal bit of it, if they can share whatever they can, it would be really cool. Yeah, but we need to know how to do it here. This is our playground.
I was following up this story of China and the whole AI models that they're building, and then the chips probably people think were stolen from Nvidia and then probably taken there. Yeah. And I was asking myself, how many Ugandans have that kind of conviction that what we are going to rebuild our own thing, even if they refuse to sell to us all these things. But thank you so much, Don, for accepting our invitation. Really we'll continue the conversations. I think probably host you another time and have a deeper conversation. But for today, you've been the first guest on our podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks. I'm really, really honored. Really, really, extremely honored. Thank you so much.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you. And to our viewers, we'll be posting once a month. We'll be having one episode once a month. And we'll be probably posting a couple of clips on our socials, which will eventually roll out. And look out for tailored Ugandan entrepreneur stories that are probably going to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs. My name is Derek Mugabi, and this is made possible by High People Foundation. Thank you.